There are no queries, convener, so I will now ask the Committee Services Officer to take a roll call for the minute. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Convener.
I'm here.
Councillor Alexander.
I'm also here.
Councillor Anderson.
Good evening, I'm here.
I've had apologies from the Lord Provost. Deputy Lord Provost Cordell.
Present.
Bailey Dawson.
I'm here.
Councillor El Nakla.
I'm here.
Councillor Flynn.
Good evening, I'm here.
Councillor Lynn.
Present.
Bailey Roberts.
Good evening, I'm here.
Councillor Rome. Councillor Rome. Councillor Finn. Oh, sorry. Bailey Sors. Councillor Short.
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
I'm here.
Councillor Toland. Councillor Toland.
I'm so sorry, I must have muted myself. Yeah, I'm here, sorry.
Thank you. Bailey Keenan.
Present.
I've had apologies from Councillor Cruikshank. Councillor Finnegan.
Evening, present.
Councillor McHugh.
Present.
Councillor McIrvin.
Present.
Councillor Malone.
Apologies for Councillor Malone.
Thank you. Councillor Scullin.
Evening, present.
Councillor Shears.
Apologies in for Councillor Shears.
Thank you. Bailey Wright.
Present.
Bailey McPherson.
Good evening, present.
Councillor Coleman.
Good evening.
Councillor Crichton.
Present.
Councillor Duncan.
Here.
Bailey Scott.
Here.
Mrs McVean.
I'm here.
Mrs Little.
Present.
Mr Abu Bakr. Mark him as absent. Mr Gibson. Mark him as absent. Ms Barclay.
I am present.
Mrs Javed. Mark is absent. Mr Anderson McGuinness. Miss Orchardson. That concludes the roll call, convener.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. Can we just move on to the first item on the agenda, please?
Yeah, that's item 1, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations?
Okay, I'm not seeing MD indicating, so I don't think there is.
Okay, that takes us on to item 2, achievement of curriculum for excellence levels 2022-2023, and this is for noting.
Okay, so Bailey Keenan, I think you tried to put something in the chat, so I'll bring you in first, and then Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, a question for officers, really, convener. Given that the Attainment Challenge Fund has been cut for 3 years on the trot, that would have taken out about 70 staff from schools, including teachers, and obviously a recent budget where you took out a further 33 staff. I'm just wondering whether professionally officers would think this would assist closing the attainment gap or hinder it. So a simple will it assist or will it hinder?
Okay, I'll pass over first of all in the first instance to Mrs May, but she might wish to pass to other officers as well.
Thanks, convener, and thanks for the question, Bailey Keenan. And I'm sure you can imagine this is a conversation we have regularly in our team as we look at the reduction in the Scottish Attainment Challenge Fund. I'm going to ask Paul Fleming, as the Head of Education, to come in to just share high-level messages around the plans that we do have in place to mitigate against that.
So, sorry, Convener, we'll have to mitigate. So would that suggest that will be a detrimental for the fact that we need to mitigate?
Well, I think
we're really talking huge number of teachers and professionals out of schools.
Well, with all due respect, Bailey Keenan, I think perhaps rather than just jumping in, perhaps let the officers answer the questions that you asked, and then you can come and follow up. I think that's probably the proper procedure in how we handle committee meetings. So, Mr. Fleming, I'll pass over to you since you are invited by the Executive Director to make a comment.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you very much, Bailey Keenan, for the question. It's a challenging question. I think what we always have to do and what we speak to our senior leaders about is making best use of the funds available. And what we absolutely have available is still over £5 million allocated directly to schools. And that is additional monies to spend to tackle the poverty-related attainment gap. So it is about making best use of the 1,400 teachers that we do have in place, the hundreds of support staff we have, the £1.3 million of strategic equity fund we have, and the over 5 million we have in PEF, which is still managing to help us maintain a pedagogy team. And research will tell us that what will help raise attainment and close the gap more is having highly skilled professionals and support staff in front of our young people. And that's why we've managed to maintain our pedagogy team and our focus on professional learning and upskilling of staff to be able to support the needs of our young people in the classroom.
Okay, can I ask a different question then? Do you feel that you'll be able to retain that level of staff while making the level of cuts that has been made or enforced on you over the last 3 years? Will you keep attracting that high skill level, or do you think people will think, why would I go into teaching?
Okay, Mr. Fleming, if you want to answer that.
Thanks, Bailey Keenan. Obviously, I can't speak for every individual in terms of the wishes to come into teaching, but what we absolutely will have and what we must maintain is the statutory agreements in terms of the level of staff. So what we will absolutely have is the amount of staff that we need based on SNCT, Scottish National Committee, negotiating committee for teachers agreements, whether that's young people with additional support needs or whether that's mainstream classrooms. So we have no challenges at the moment in terms of maintaining or attracting teachers to Dundee, and I can't foresee any challenge with that in the near future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleming. Councillor Coleman, you have the next question.
Thank you, Mr. Convener. It is good to see the areas of positive progress, which I'm sure we all really welcome, and I think we all thank teachers and pupils for their hard work and the positive steps forward. However, the gap in literacy achievement between pupils from the most deprived quintiles remains about 20 points behind those from the least deprived quintiles, as exemplified in 5.5 of the report. Furthermore, at 6.4, we are reminded that Dundee, that the poverty-related attainment gap remains wider in Dundee than it was in 16-17. And I note the third bullet point at 7.1, as Bailey Keenan has alluded to, about making use of those additional resources left. But surely the large reductions in the Scottish Attainment Challenge funding this year and next, and any reduction in teacher numbers in the city, makes the resourcing of this harder. Can I therefore please ask the Director or the Head of Education what recent discussions there have been with the Scottish Government of future targeted additional funding to make further progress and improving attainment, particularly from those pupils in the most deprived areas?
Okay, I'll pass over to Mrs. May in the first instance, but again, if you wish to pass to Mr. Fleming as well.
Happy to answer that question myself. Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Coleman. Yes, if you look at the pattern across Scotland, you'll see that Dundee is very much in line with that. So it's not just a Dundee situation just now that attainment gap is not actually closing as much as we'd wish it to. However, you will see that one of the reasons that our gap is not closing is because actually the children in quintile 1 are improving their attainment, as are the children in quintile 5. So we keep raising the bar there across all measures. So it's really important to just think about the data in that way as well. And yeah, the gap isn't closing as much as we'd want it to, but it's certainly because all groups of young people are improving their attainment in their curriculum for excellence levels in our primary schools as described. In terms of conversations with Scottish Government, we work directly with Education Scotland. We are allocated an attainment advisor from the Scottish Attainment Challenge programme. So we still have that, and we look at how we can deploy those folks who are coming to the city to work with us, with our teams, with our central staff and with our head teachers on how we target the work that we need to continue to do to build on the progress that we've made so far in addressing the attainment gap, which wasn't just about closing gaps, but it's also about raising the bar, which I think you'll see from some of the data in front of you has definitely shown some improvement. Thank you.
Okay, and I think also the point that Mrs. May has made there is really important, that of course closing the attainment gap is really important, but the last thing you want to do is close the attainment gap because there's a drop in the attainment from the children or young people in the least deprived area. You want their gap, you want their performance to improve, but also all the other quintiles to improve, which if you see in the paper, actually all 5 quintiles have improved over the last few years, which I think is positive progress. That doesn't mean there isn't still a gap to close, and I'm sure, as you'll see from some of the other comments officers have made in the report, there's a lot of things in place to make sure that happens. I don't know if that answers your question, Councillor Coleman?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive.
Okay. And Councillor Alexander, so you have a question and a comment.
Thanks very much, Convener. The Executive Director has slightly stolen my thunder because I was going to ask a question in regards to the gap and the nature of that, given that we're seeing improvements across the board. And again, I don't think we should be shy from celebrating the fact that every single learner, no matter what their background is seeing an improvement in their attainment levels and their ability to perform well through their schooling system. What we want to do is see a more rapid increase, I suppose, in those that are from more deprived backgrounds. And as we all know, and we spoke about very recently at the budget meeting, Dundee has significant levels of poverty and deprivation. That's something that we're all very alive to. It's the motivation. It's what gets us all out of bed in the morning. And it's what motivates us to particularly improve educational outcomes, because we know that's one way of improving the long-term outcomes for young people as well. I wanted to pick up one point and then perhaps circle back to a question, if you'll indulge me for a moment, Convener. Bailey Keenan's comments, which I, in some senses I wholeheartedly agree with. I, as members will know, will always campaign for more resources for the city. I've had direct conversations with the Cabinet Secretary when she was last in Dundee, raising the issue of attainment funding, and I will never miss the opportunity to look to leverage more resources. But I think it's also worth remembering that that vote that agreed to, I suppose, disperse that resources across 32 local authorities was endorsed by Bailey Keenan's party. And again, we have had the discussion before in terms of COSLA, where I was the only leader in the whole of Scotland that did not endorse the proposal to reduce that funding level for Dundee. So I think, to be absolutely clear, we're all speaking with one voice when we say we want more money coming into the city. Now, the question I was going to ask was, obviously, in respect to this report, it references primary 1, 4 and 7 as that kind of snapshot. Can I just ask the Executive Director and perhaps the Head of Education to comment on the other primaries and how we see that progress continuing in the coming year? Is that a trajectory that we think or believe that will continue in a positive direction?
Okay, Mrs. May, I'll pass yourself.
I'll bring Paul Fleming in to answer that, if that's okay, Convener. Thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Thank you, and Convener, just as my computer decided to update. Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Alexandra. Yes, we track all of the data, as you would imagine, for every single year group throughout primary and secondary education, not just in terms of achievement, but in terms of progress. You'll see from the report that we've seen some big increases at primary 4 and primary 7 level. That's not always seen across the country, particularly primary 4 where there's a dip. What we are seeing in Dundee is a challenge around the early years, so our primary 1 attainment in terms of the young people who really experienced COVID in their formative years around speech and language communication needs, and that's why we work very very closely with our speech and language therapists and NHS partners, we are expecting to maintain these levels of improvement, notwithstanding the challenges we're seeing in the earliest years, and that's where we're diverting our attention to in terms of our Strategic Equity Fund and schools' use of Pupil Equity Fund as well. You'll see in the report that we're seeing some records in terms of highest attainment since pre-COVID, but also on record. And you'll see the last highest, for example, primary 7 attainment was 18-19, and those young people are in our S3 year group now, and we're seeing a big improvement in S3 this year in terms of our projections compared to S3 the previous year. So overall, we're seeing an increase, but we're seeing challenges within different year groups, and we're diverting resources and attention as and when required throughout the year.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and the only thing I would add to that is I think, Councillor Coleman mentioned earlier on that this is a great thanks to staff and young people, and it absolutely is. And I think also recognising the work that the team in the centre have done. So a lot of the decisions that have got us to this place didn't happen in the last year or two, but happened quite a bit in the past, and we've now started seeing that progress. I have to say, some of the decisions that we took to get to this stage weren't always universally welcomed in this chamber. However, I think we're now starting to see the fruits of some of that work, but there is still a lot more work to go on, and I think hopefully we will see that trajectory continue and that attainment gap close. With that, I don't see anybody else wishing to come in on this item, so can this be agreed? Okay, that's been approved. Okay, Arlene?
Thanks, Convener. That takes us on to item 3, retaining reserve places in schools from 2024-25. I've been asked to highlight to you that there's a typographical error on page 20, which is Appendix 2, relates to Note 5. The last sentence should read, however, at P7 to S1 transfer, all P7 children of the primary school who live in the catchment area of the associated primary school are given priority 1 status for the associated secondary school, but a placing request must be submitted by the first Monday in February. The report is for approval.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. This is an annual report, so I don't know if there's any questions or any comments on this report. I'm not seeing MD coming in, so can this report be agreed? Okay, thank you. And I think that's the Children and Family Committee's meeting over. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight.
Okay,
Thank you, Convener.
Can I just take this opportunity to submit my apologies? I had hoped to make tonight's meeting, but I'm just back from a blood test, so I didn't get a chance to record my apologies. So could somebody somebody record my apologies on my behalf? I have questions of Audrey, but I'll put those to her in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Malone. I confirm your apologies will be recorded as requested.
Thank you.
The next committee this evening is the Neighbourhood Regeneration, Housing and Estate Management Committee.
Good evening, everyone, and we'll just move on with the business. Arlene, please.
Thanks, Convener. Item 1, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations?
I don't see any. No hands up. Yep, we'll just move on, Arlene, please. That's great. Thank you.
Item 2, tenders received by Head of Design and Property, and this is for approval.
Just in front of us, a couple of tenders which Tayside Contracts and Dundee Plant were successful in. Any comments or questions in regard to them? I don't see any, so we'll take that as agreed. Thank you. And that's the business for Neighbourhood Regeneration, Housing and Estate Management. Got it right that time. Just before we move on, if that's okay, just take a bit of time. As many of you know, this is the last Neighbourhood Regeneration Housing and Estate Management Committee that will have the pleasure of the Company of Elaine's Willing. While this may be a relatively new committee, I would hate to think exactly how many meetings of this, the former Housing Committee and the Housing, Dundee Contract Services and Environment Services Committees, Elaine has attended down the years as both Director and latterly as Executive Director. Even though I've only been the committee convener for a short time, working closely with Elaine and her team, her well-deserved reputation as one of the most dedicated, professional and knowledgeable Chief Officers has been obvious for me since I was first elected. In a long career, there's not much that Elaine has not seen or done, accomplishing many tasks and delivering success with a quiet and determined efficiency that I, for one, will certainly miss when she retires later this month. Noting Elaine is not just there during committees, but also throughout the working week to offer advice, guidance and insight, has made working with her in an education and a confidence booster as we move forward. Excuse me. And during what's sometimes going to be highly charged encounters at committee, she will always have an answer that cuts to the heart of whatever issue is at hand. I'm sure everyone, and therefore everyone at the committee, will join me in wishing Elaine for the best in her retirement, and to extend an invitation that if she's ever at a loose end on a Monday evening, she can always check in the committee live streamed or remind her of what she's missing. So thanks, Elaine, and I'll open it up to any comments from any other members who might be welcomed. I see Councillor Lynn, I think you were first.
Yeah, it's not normally the protocol other than for group leaders to comment when someone retires, but I have to say, without wanting to embarrass you, Elaine, you're one of the officers going back 17 years that I've liked the most. I like them all, but apart from your competence at your job and the fact that you always got back to me so quickly, no matter what my inquiry, I'll be really sorry to see you go. Apart from your professional skills, I'll also miss your very dry sense of humour, which appeals to me greatly. And I hope to see you at some point in the future. All the best.
Thanks, Ken. I don't think your group leader will mind these nice comments. Bailey McPherson, I see you next.
Thanks, convener. Elaine and I go back a long way, because I first knew Elaine when both she and I were employees of not Dundee City Council, but the City of Dundee District Council, which wasn't exactly last week. And I would say that from that time until now, Elaine has shown an absolutely immense contribution. She's made an absolutely immense contribution to the areas for which she has had responsibility for a long time, of that in the housing field only, but obviously a wider remit in more recent years, which she's carried out with sheer professionalism. And as Councillor Lynn alluded to, cheerfulness and likeability are key hallmarks of Elaine's personality, and she will be greatly missed. I would close, however, in saying, just ignore that suggestion from Councillor Flynn about the live stream, Elaine. I'm sure there will be wonderful things for you to do in your retirement, and I can genuinely say I can think of quite a few that you could consider that don't involve live streaming Dundee City Council meetings. But in all seriousness, we will all miss you, Elaine. We wish you a long and happy retirement. Thank you, convener.
Thanks, Bob McPherson, and I'll bring you in at the end, Lynn, because I think you'll probably see there's a number of people want to make comment, if that's okay. I think Councillor Alexander, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we'll all be unanimous in terms of our view of Elaine as a fantastic officer. Should be slightly worried by Councillor Lynn's comments that you've got a very similar sense of humour, so just note that for caution. But I think I've already said to you via email, Elaine, how highly I think of you and how fantastic you've been personally for me in supporting me since I was elected at the ripe old age of 23. And without your guidance, your knowledge, your support, but also your constructive challenge, I don't think I would have learnt as much. I don't think I would have enjoyed. It's not all been enjoyable, it's fair to say, but certainly for the most part, I think I've certainly enjoyed the journey with you. And of course, much of that was as your convener, both as housing and then latterly as neighbourhood services. And I know that not only are you genuinely lovely and caring and a force for good, but you carry out everything that you say you're going to carry out in such a professional, courteous, professional manner. It's going to be really hard to replace you. And of course, I've got that difficult task now of chairing the committee that does so. So I'm going to have to really wrestle myself not to do a comparison with the previous executive director, because you will be very sorely missed, and a pair of shoes that will be very hard to fill as well. So wish you and David and the family all the best as you set out on your various cruises over the coming couple of years. And yeah, you're welcome back at any point, but I don't expect to see you.
Cheers, John. Bailey Keenan, sorry, you're next.
I think most of it's been said. Elaine, you have been an excellent officer over the years and very professional in everything you've done. Marvellous from the point of view of you actually believe in the things that you're delivering, and that must make coming to work that much easier when things are tough, when you're actually striving to make a difference to people's lives and genuinely trying to make that difference or to the quality of someone's life. No matter whether that was housing or the other support areas that you're involved in throughout the city. So I wish you well in your retirement. I hope you have a very long and happy retirement. And if it's cruises you like on, then see and have many and enjoy them all. And enjoy your time with your family. Cheers.
All right. Thanks, Bailey Keenan. I'll leave you a second, Councillor Short. I'll bring in Bailey Scott first, please, if that's okay. Bailey Scott.
Thank you. Thanks, Convener. Just wanted to wish you well for your retirement as well, Elaine. I was on the council when you started your career with the council 31 years ago, and I'm still here when you're leaving. But in that time, I've seen you progress through the ranks to become a really first-class executive director, and the role you've played has been immense, and it'll be a hard act to follow. But I also want to thank you for the role you played as chair of the Brutty Ferry LCPP and all the great things you managed to achieve together for the Ferry Ward. So I'm grateful to you for that as well, and wish you all the best for your retirement.
Thanks, Bailey Scott. And Councillor Short, please.
Thank you, Convener. As your deputy, I thought it would be opportune to come in and have a slightly different voice to the table. I could never get across when I first became a councillor why it was Mr. Galloway and Mr. So-and-so, but it was always Elaine. And I think what Elaine has done is she's shown us that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And if I look at the council now compared to the council as it was when I first came in, just a mere 8 years ago, you can see there's an awful lot of women that are making their way through the ranks, and that is a really pleasing thing to see across the council. And it's someone like Elaine, you being in that position has given others that viewpoint that yes, we can go for it as well. So not just a good officer, but a good role model for all of the women across this local authority and the city and beyond. So thank you very much for doing what you do. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks, Lynn, and I think everyone will agree with every comment has been made by all the councillors here, but I think there's only one way to end this, really, is it? Elaine, would you like to come back and say anything? As always.
I think I'm always known for my brevity at committee, so I won't be long-winded on this occasion, but I just wanted to say thank you very, very much for your kind words. I have thoroughly enjoyed my 31 years with the council. There's no I in team. Everything that I've achieved it because of the marvellous, wonderful groups of people that I've worked with over that time. And, I will definitely miss the people, because it's the people who have made the transformation of this city so positive and so long lasting. And I just wish you all the very best for the future. I will be watching from the sidelines because it gets under your skin and you can never ever leave it. But there's lots of really able and capable people that are picking up the mantle and driving the city forward. So I'll watch from the sidelines with positivity and joy to see that happening. But thank you all for your support over the years. You can't do this job if you don't have the support right across the piece, and I've always had that support, and I've never taken it for granted, but I've always appreciated it, so thank you.
No, thank you, and thanks again for everything you've done. You see a number of comments in the chat. Bailey Wright saying happy retirement, Billy Sawyer saying happy retirement, as is Councillor Dawson, or Billy Dawson. So we'll just have a round of applause. Thank you very much. And that's the close of business for Neighbourhood Regeneration, Housing and Estate Management for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. The final committee this evening is the City Governance Committee.
Thank you very much, Roger. Willie, we'll kick off the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Firstly, are there any declarations of interest?
Any declarations? Nope.
Yes, please.
Oh, right. Sorry, I was about to say, Councillor Coleman, I didn't quite understand your acronym there. I was about to say, what does DOL mean? But yes, sorry. Please continue.
Thank you. It's in relation to the item that's on the agenda, my name. Given that we'll be speaking about the national team, it's appropriate to me. I'm a member of the Scottish FA, as per my register of interest, but it's non-financial.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coleman. We'll make sure that is noted. And with that, we'll move on. Willie.
Thank you very much, Convener. That then takes you on to item 2, the Euro 2024 Championship proposal for fan zone. And this item has been placed on the agenda by Councillor Coleman.
Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Convener. I would be grateful if the motion in my name could please be circulated by committee services. So the motion itself is pretty self-explanatory, and since I made these calls a few weeks ago, it has been very clear from the reaction I've received from constituents and residents across the city that the idea of a fan zone for this June's European Championships is something that would be most welcome indeed, and the action has been hugely enthusiastic, frankly. We all welcome, I'm sure, Scotland's qualification for the Euros and recognise the importance of football to the national identity of Scotland. And I'm sure you all will join me in wishing Steve Clarke and the men's A team all the very best as they represent Scotland this summer in Germany. As far as I'm concerned, it would be a crying shame if the city did not have a fan zone, something other cities have achieved for previous footballing and sporting events. And I'm sure we will all agree that it need to be ambitious for the city. It would be indeed disappointing if Dundee just sat this one out. All I'm seeking to do here with this motion tonight is to ask officers to explore the viability of hosting a civic fan zone for each of Scotland's games at Euro 2024, and indeed I hope there are more than 3, looking at all possible sites in Dundee for hosting such a zone, considering the financial viability, including sourcing sponsorship, working with any business in the city that may be interested in collaborating with such a venture, and quite possibly liaising with the 2 city professional football clubs. There's a need to consider all available options for delivery, including contracting the services of an events team, events management company to deliver a fan zone, and also possible private sector delivery of this if that proves more viable than in-house delivery. Of course, I fully appreciate the limited internal event staffing resource with the council, so partnership with the private sector that may well be the viable way forward. I'm also well aware of initial discussions from city development officers that they have had with the commercial sector hoping to do a fan zone, and although one expression of interest has not gone any further, it has shown that the interest has been huge, far exceeding that venue's ability to manage a fan zone within its own grounds. However, I understand that there is other commercial interest in a fan zone concept in Dundee, which is indeed welcome. I hope that other members of the council can see merit in this proposal, and thank you for your time, Mr. Convener.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'll come to Councillor Crichton next. Michael.
Thank you, Convener. I won't take too much of our time tonight because I think hopefully we can kind of cross-party agree on this one. I'm more than happy to second Councillor Coleman on this. I think the potential of a fan zone has created a lot of excitement, certainly in my West End ward when talking to people out and about. And I think what we're trying to do here is not party political. We're not trying to say put the resources to it. We're saying let's explore options. And I think with the city plan and everything that we want to do with Dundee, I think creating a space for fans to enjoy it and come together is something that people reflect from 5, 10, 15 years time, and hopefully obviously if we can get to knockout stages, it'll be really memorable. So nothing controversial in here. Really happy to support it, and I hope we all can support looking at viable options for the people of Dundee to have a great fan zone and have a great experience this summer. So more than happy to second Councillor Coleman.
Thanks very much, Michael. I'll bring in Councillor Short next. Lynn.
Thank you. As you'll know, seeing as you gave me the title, Convener, I have been for a number of months now the Dundee City Council spokesperson for culture, sport and history. And certainly in my history, one of the most amazing days of my life was when I was working as a tour guide, and I lived in Paris the day that Scotland played Brazil for the opening of the World Cup in '98. So I understand just how exciting it can be, and I think it would be really sad if we didn't have something. But I do know that there is something that will be announced very soon, which I think will hopefully please everyone around these tables and around the city. All I can say is press very soon might enlighten everybody, but I don't believe that Dundee could allow this to pass us by and not have the opportunity to celebrate with the Tartan Army, and also do it in a way that's going to be a memory for the young people, because I hate to say it, it's not something that always comes around, so we should make the best of it while it's here. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks very much, Councillor Short. Bringing Bailey McPherson next. Fraser?
Yeah, thanks indeed, Convener. Just very, very briefly, just two aspects of this. And I'm glad, I think we're inching towards something that really, to be honest, is just agreeing to explore viability, to be honest. I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to that in this, we are very aware that time is short in relation to this, and therefore we are saying that here on in the need for the use of delegated powers to effectively let officers just move this forward, no doubt in discussion with the commercial sector as well, is necessary. The other thing I would say with regard to, because I am aware of interest out there in discussions with the commercial sector, and I think one thing we have to get right is capacity, because I'm aware of one particular proposal which, although excellent and worthy of consideration, if held at that particular location, both inside and outside, you're talking about a maximum capacity of about 300. Now, bearing in mind the one that didn't go forward, tried to move their potential fan zone elsewhere because they had over 1,000 expressions of interest. I think we just have to be very conscious that there is as Councillor Coleman actually alluded to, there's a great deal of interestness out there. But I'm very grateful. I had a really useful discussion with Mr. Presswood regarding the whole matter, and we're very conscious of the limited resources within the events team, and frankly this wouldn't be the only thing, as I think we all know, that they are dealing with at present, but I think at least giving instruction to officers to explore the viability of this and to work with the private sector, I think is well worth doing, and I'm grateful for the supported comments thus far. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks very much, Fraser, for your brevity as well. And I'll maybe just tie off the item, hopefully, with some broad agreement. I think we're all agreed that we would like to see the city celebrate, hopefully, Scotland's success in the Euros. Let's be optimistic about the opportunity that the Euros affords our national team. And beyond that, again, it's something that really gets the city, it gets the country excited in the lead up and of course on match days as well. I think again there might have been some concern, but you've allayed some of those in terms of just being clear that there are various opportunities and the form of which they take, I think we've got to be open to. So whether it is led by the private sector or another entity, I think it's really important that we can be a supportive force in that conversation. It doesn't obviously mean that the council will host it, but of course the council is there to help enable and ensure things can be delivered. So on that basis, I'm certainly very supportive, and as Councillor Short has already been appraised and engaged in conversations around some of those opportunities, and again I think we'll all wait to see what that means in practice. So I think just to tie this off, it might be helpful if I can just bring in I think Gregor is on the call. I can't see right now, but I think he is, just to confirm that there are conversations happening with private sector entities and that the council is fully engaged in those. Gregor, can I ask you to come in and just comment in that respect?
Convener, thank you. Yes, I can confirm that the events team has been liaising with a number of parties, and we are hopeful that something will happen through one of those discussions. I think we recognise just how challenging it will be for the council itself, given the relatively short amount of time available between now and the tournament starting. But we are there to support anyone who wishes to do something, and hopefully something will be announced very soon.
Thanks very much, Gregor. Can I just make one suggestion, perhaps, if you'd indulge me, Councillor Coleman. So I know at the end of your motion it says report back to the City Governance Committee, or again under delegated powers. I'm conscious, just in terms of some of the conversations that are currently happening, that the next committee will be the 22nd of April, and it might well be that if something is announced in the next week or so, that it might not necessitate a report of such. So I wonder if you would be willing to add there, because if it's an event that we're not running or not necessarily directly in a tangible way involved in, but we're happy that that is taken the form that we have requested, if that makes sense, then does it still require something to come back to committee, or is that, is it a briefing note to keep us appraised of how that's being delivered or what form it's taken? Does that make sense? So I just wonder if we can maybe add that we are informed of, because if it's a third sector or a private sector entity, of course, it will not be the responsibility of the council. So I just wonder if we need to add a couple of words in there that allows us to be appraised and updated, but not necessarily through the reporting mechanism of a committee.
Yes, I'm quite happy for that, John, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, on that basis, I think we have unanimous agreement. Okay, thank you very much, all. We'll move on to the next item. Billy.
Okay, thank you, Convener. Item 3 then is capital expenditure monitoring. This is for noting.
Yep, hopefully self-explanatory, but happy to take any questions members might have. Bailey McPherson.
Yeah, just a very brief one, Convener, in relation to the information at 5.1, in relation to the outturn as it looks, and indeed at 5.2. 5.2 alludes to the fact that we've seen a decrease of 1.431 million since the capital plan was approved on the 19th of February, quite recently. We're all aware, and I've alluded to this before, where I think we all accept that there are challenges in delivery of capital programmes in the current climate. I suppose my question is really around, are we confident that the reprofiling for 24-25 arising out of the revision to the capital plan means that we will get to a higher percentage of the capital plan being delivered on time? We're sitting at 73% as of the 31st of January. We're very much towards the end of the financial year. And I was just really wondering if perhaps Mr. Emmett or Mr. Thompson might be able to give us some assurances that the alterations that we recently unanimously approved for the capital plan will lead to a reprofiling that basically means we've got a higher level of delivery of what's expected in 24-25 than perhaps we've been able to achieve in 23-24.
Thanks, Fraser. I'll bring in, I think, the Executive Director's on the call. Robert?
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Billy McPherson. So we've worked really hard with colleagues across the council to try and make next year's plan as realistic as possible. I'm mindful that we often have aspirational projects that are seeking to draw in external funding, and between that and the cost pressures we've seen in the recent years, we have seen some slippage. But we've worked really hard just to try and make sure that what we've agreed to do next year is work that we're expecting to be delivered. And I guess the proof will be in when we see the monitoring coming forward in the next year, Convener. But I'm quietly optimistic that we'll see a better performance next year.
That's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question. See no other questions on this item, so can I take that as agreed, please? Thank you very much. We'll move on. Willie?
Okay, thank you. Item 4 then is revenue monitoring. This is also for noting.
Again, hopefully self-explanatory. Any questions on this? Bailey Keenan.
Question in relation to the remedial work on roofs. On the 19th of February, you're predicting you would spend about 1.4, and this one we're predicting we spend 1.2. Now, it concerns me that we're not making the progress on roof replacement that we should do. And looking at sort of websites that are up around on Facebook of the People's Voice against Dundee City Council, there's quite a number of damp and water ingress problems. And we also know that there's a rack problem. So wondering, why you were slowing up the program, why is the programme slowing in some way? And have we got concern that in some of these ones that need a roof replaced, or some of these ones that we've got a water ingress. We also have a rack issue in as well.
Thanks for the question, Bailey Keenan. I think officers are obviously undertaking quite a lot of work in terms of just investigating and seeking assurance across properties of various types and making sure that work is prioritised. But I'll not answer for the Executive Director. Elaine, can I perhaps bring you into what might be your last question at committee?
Thank you very much, Convener, and thanks, Bailey Keenan, for the question. What I'm happy to do is, obviously at the previous committee, we agreed to bring back a report on the overall repairs and maintenance progress. So I'm happy to include an update for committee on the roof remediation programme at the same time, so we can incorporate that in the report that's coming back for you.
As usual, Elaine, happy with everything you tell me.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks very much. Councillor Duncan. Craig.
Thanks, Convener. Just a quick question relates to 8.2 and the expenditure in HRA on relets to work through the backlog of properties and to try and avoid void losses of, I think we're looking at about 3.225 million reported. Can I just ask officers, how successful has this been to date, and is the backlog being successfully tackled?
Again, Elaine, I'll defer to you.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for the question. I'd like to invite the Head of Housing and Construction, Olga Clayton, just to give you an update on the work that she's been doing with the Service Manager for Construction Services and Housing to tap into getting into the backlog of repairs. So if Olga Clayton can update you, that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Olga?
Thank you. As Elaine had previously highlighted, we have committed to bringing back a comprehensive report on the approach we're taking to repairs, including voids. However, in the meantime, we have been making good progress. We have seen the number of voids being returned by construction services move from 21 a week in the end of last year to 34 in the last week. So we are eating into the backlog. We have also got a comprehensive plan about how we continue this, and that's what I'll be bringing back to committee. Obviously, we have suffered a period of delay, and that has resulted in higher than average void rent loss, and catching up on that has meant that we have had substantial expenditure on materials. Obviously, we're looking to forecast that accurately going forward, but our focus is very much in bringing these voids back in and working with the teams in housing construction. We have certainly seen some good progress over the last few weeks.
Positive to hear. Are you happy with that, Craig?
No, that's very positive indeed. And just to get my tuppence worth in, bye-bye, Elaine. Don't miss us too much.
Thanks very much. And again, I think just to reiterate, sometimes officers do themselves a disservice, because I know that Olga and the rest of the team have been doing some sterling work in terms of just the identification, data crunching, looking at the numbers, looking at the throughput, looking at the forecasting, as you rightly mentioned. And it's, we know it's an incredibly challenging environment. We know there's a lot more that we need to be doing, and we want to make bigger inroads into that. But on the basis of what I've heard tonight, and of course what I know is happening in the background, I think we are certainly going to make some real progress over the coming 12 months, and I think we'd all broadly welcome that. So thanks again for all your hard work taking that forward. There's no other questions on this, so can I take this item as agreed, please? Thank you very much. Willie?
Okay, thank you. Takes you on to item 5, Treasury Management Strategy. We're asking you the recommendations.
Again, this is the annual report that comes forward, the Council's Treasury Management Strategy and the Annual Investment Strategy for 24-25. The net borrowing required for 24-25 is 102 million, and in light of that, there's expected to be a phased borrowing during the year, and that will be based on cash flow and interest rate monitoring to determine the value and, of course, the term of each loan. And I think what we've seen from these reports before is that incredibly prudent approach to how we manage the financial strategy. And again, these reports are generally very well constructed and set out very clearly what the approach is. Any questions on this report? Nope. Can I take that as agreed? Thank you very much. Willie, back to you.
Yeah, item 6 is Treasury Policy Statement. This is for approval.
Yep. Again, hopefully it's self-explanatory. The Treasury policy statement, of course, governs all borrowing and lending transactions by the Council, so an important statement and approach. Anything? Nope. Can this be agreed? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Item 7 then is community wishes. This is for noting.
Again, this report, I think, is something that we'd all broadly welcome. It sets out a proposed approach to community wishes, and that will be to deliver and build upon the important work that's been undertaken in terms of community wealth building over a period of years. It's going to be delivered as part of an expansion to the community benefits programme, so that's obviously designed to maximise the economic and social benefits that come out of procurement activity in all its forms. We know that the Council has a significant reach in terms of its procurement, not just on the capital side, but also on the revenue side. And the more that we can use our clout, so to speak, to benefit local business, the local economy, but also local organisations, community groups, and our broader communities is really vitally important. The principle, of course, is that communities can come forward with their projects, their asks, and that will provide almost a shopping list so that we can enable a direct connectivity between some of the private sector entities that are operating through those procurement processes and connect them with real projects that are live, that are real, and that are ultimately led by communities. And I think in that sense, this is a real welcome step. And of course, we have our community wealth building officer on the call. Should there be any difficult questions, I'll happily defer to Rachel's superior knowledge. But I think, Michael, Councillor Crichton.
Yep, thank you, Convener. Just a comment and question, if I may. I really welcome this report. It was really great to have a presentation at our LCPP in the West End. I think it was last week. Really appreciate that. And my question really is in regard to my day job. Actually unrelated to this project, but in my day job, I actually deal with community benefits. So I see what other local authorities, etc., are doing. And my question is, what kind of communication is there with the private sector on what is being asked for is actually what the community wants? For instance, in my kind of day job in the Highlands, they want a community toilet, and that was actually more money than what is actually on the list, and we actually provided that. So if you don't ask, you kind of don't get. So wondering kind of what kind of communications there are in regards to that, just to ensure what the community is looking for is exactly what it says. So that's my question.
Thanks for the question, Michael. I think that's a really important point. And of course, this is one mechanism, and there'll be lots of other approaches as part of that overall process. But Rachel, if I can bring you in, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, we will be working directly with contractors to kind of explain the process to them and highlight, what kind of elements they can deliver. I think it's important to note that contractors want this. We've had requests from contractors to actually do this, because I think the difference is that the ask comes with a moderation exercise, so that the contractors are aware that there is all of the kind of permissions and things in place, but also, and my apologies, that's my cat, it's not a child, it's my cat, that all the permissions and things are in place that are required, and also that the community want it, because I think that's always been a kind of concern before. Contractors get a chap on their door when their vans arrive on site, but actually having that kind of confirmation that the community is looking for something as well, I think will be a really important part of the process. So if that covers what you were looking for, Councillor Crichton?
If I may, John, yeah. Thank you very much. And no, it's just, I think we all can agree, especially now when money's tight, I think when you've got the private sector coming in and giving money to the local communities, if we can talk to them as much as possible, and the communication being key, obviously, hopefully we can get as much into Dundee as we can through these projects. So and thank you for the report again. It was really well presented when you came. So thank you.
Thanks very much. And I'll move to Councillor Short. Lynn.
Thank you, Convener.
Apologies, Lynn. Sorry, I'm going to cut across you there because I have missed Bailey Scott. So I'll come back to you in 2 seconds. Derek, apologies.
That's okay, no worries. I was just, and I think my question might have been answered in what Rachel has just said, but it's regarding how do we ensure that there's no cherry picking goes on, and that all the wishes that are in the portal are actioned, and that none of them are left on the shelf because they don't necessarily are attractive to some developers?
Thanks, Derek. Rachel?
Well, I suppose, firstly, say we can't guarantee that in the first instance. The way that the system is set up is that contractors will be identifying the wishes and taking forward the ones which are sit within, I suppose, their expertise, their interest in the kind of geographical area they want to look at. Having said that, we will be reviewing the wishes as we go through. So we're calling our first year a kind of review year, so that we can go back and then really analyse and see where wishes are being picked up, and I suppose importantly where they're not being picked up, and where if we need to do some targeting there, so to ensure that things like the regeneration areas and things are kind of picked up effectively. But community wishes models will almost always run on this on the basis of contractors' direction, and that's, I suppose, to recognise that we are trying to administer this within existing resources, and trying to target it at the kind of front end is a really complicated process as well. So in the first instance, it would be the contractors that would be picking them up, but we would be managing that kind of longer term and providing direction if required.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Sorry, Lynn. Back to you.
That's okay. We've obviously seen across the city the impact of us bringing forward being a living wage city, and how that's kind of allowed all these different organisations across the city to join in that. And I'm presuming, convener, and I'm sure you've done this already, but looking at this from a partnership angle, because we see the universities, we see NHS, all these different people that are involved in public procurement. Can we sort of angle them to be part of something similar, so that we're bringing in to our communities as much of that wealth and opportunities that we can?
Yeah, no, it's a really well-made point, Lynn. I think we often talk about soft power, and the council has a significant amount of soft power, particularly with some of those significant public sector organisations. And as you know, I meet regularly with our universities and our college, and I sit on the board at NHS Tayside. So certainly with my other hat on, I'd be very keen to make sure that there are synergies in terms of the approach that's being taken. And I know that through Rachel and her good offices and the wider efforts of the City Council, there's been a proactive engagement, and there's also been previous presentations to the Dundee Partnership, for example. So Rachel, sorry, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, so again, in the first instance, we have to maintain it with Dundee contractors, and that's about the liability element. So basically, we need to have a contractual relationship with the organisation that delivers the work, so that we can have liability insurance. But having said that, it's absolutely on my agenda to expand it. Councillor Short, I mean, I think the real opportunity for the future, as with all elements of community wealth building, is really in scale and bring other partners in. I think after the review period, we'll have a much better idea of which of the wishes don't have a specialist requirement, which bit you don't have to, and what kind of checks and balances we've had to put in place. And we can have conversations with our partners about expanding it then. But certainly in the first year, it will be with Dundee City Council contracts, but there is a practical reason for that. And again, that's been at the recommendation of other authorities that have run kind of similar approaches.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Rome, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's a very similar comment to ones that have been made. My second comment, which was along that lines of how can we get a kind of look under the hood and check who's providing these services. But as you've already elucidated, and as you did say in the Inclusive Economic Growth meeting that you turned up and explained this about very well as well, it will be local Dundee firms that are providing this service. So I suppose I'm just, one is my comment, which is that I really, really welcome this, and I think it's great there'll be this kind of equalisation of opportunity across all the wards, because we all know that certain wards and also certain members may have better connections in terms of finding people to provide a service and providing extra money and support to get things done. But I think this will be really helpful for communities right across the city, including my own. But I suppose just again back to that comment that you will be open in terms of getting referrals into the service, so and out of the service even, so that people are coming along and they don't see something that quite fits with what's willing to be provided by providers, but we will refer on to other people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, to be honest, the key kind of success of or the key strength of our proposal is that kind of it'll sit in the LCPP. So I think the fact that it'll be community officers within the kind of the empowerment teams that will actually be seeing these wishes, means that it gives us a really good opportunity to kind of cross-refer on. We will build into the system other referral routes, so if we think the proposals may be too big for this, we can direct them within the system to the Community Regeneration Fund. We'll also do things like self-refer to NHS's portal and Tayside contracts, kind of community grants. So yeah, absolutely, we'll be trying to refer in, and we'll make it clear to people as well that they can put into more than one. So, you know, for me, it's all about getting things done in Dundee. So if groups want to put into more than one, then, you know, that's great. You know, we just want the activity to be delivered. But I do think that the LCPPs already have been round them all, I think, now, and they are enthusiastic about this. Groups are starting to kind of think about it. And we've kind of built in our first phase will be kind of proposals and ideas that come directly from the LCPPs and the kind of organisations represented and linked with that. So I think we'll get a really good understanding then of the kind of the depth of proposal that will go forward. But we will also work with wider partners too. So we'll work with the third sector interface and go out wider too, because the idea here is that people don't have to be constituted. It doesn't have to be a formal group that can put things forward. It can be smaller groups as well. And it is exactly those kind of groups that are often barred or unable to access other funding sources. So we've done that on purpose to be as inclusive as possible.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I think that is all the comments, but as you've said, this is an evolution, and we'll see how it develops over the coming year, and hopefully continue to make improvements and expand it to deliver far more in the city. So thanks for all your hard work on that as well. I think we are in broad agreement. Is that report agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, please, Willie.
Okay, thank you. Takes on to item 8, the IT strategy, and you're asked to agree the recommendations.
Yeah, hopefully self-explanatory, a really critical part of business in terms of the council and enabling services, supporting services, but of course from a security point of view, efficiency point of view, sustainability, and making sure that processes and our IT is meeting the expectations of the broader organisation. I'll come to Councillor Flynn. Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I think I absolutely agree with you. It's essential we continue to do this, but I think we also need to be reassured that individuals and groups who don't have IT access are still being helped across the city. And I think I just look for that reassurance from officers that we see digitally excluded groups, digitally excluded individuals. We just want to be sure and get that reassurance, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Flynn, I'll bring in Jackie, Head of IT.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the question, Councillor Flynn. Yeah, happy to give you that reassurance that we continue to try and meet the needs of those that are digitally excluded throughout the city.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there any other questions on this? I see nobody. Nope. Can this item be agreed? Thank you again. Okay, Willie.
Okay, thank you. And the final item, item 9, is provision of banking services. You're asked to agree the proposals.
You'll see the detail within this. I think previously when we've discussed this item, and sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, Councillor Duncan, there was a request certainly to make sure that officers were considering appropriate banking services when considered against the backdrop of banking closures in the city, and some of the rightfully expressed anger and I suppose frustration amongst not only elected members but communities in terms of the approach that's been taken. And I think there was a commitment from officers to try and ensure that that was on balance considered as part of that process. But Craig, I'll come to you.
Yep, to be honest, Convener, I think you and I are on the same page. We do recall that meeting and the discussions. It's just I note that we're talking about RBS here and community benefits, and I find it somewhat galling and a tad ironic to hear that phrase coming from an institution which has good form on closing down branches, most recently in Broughty Ferry, but let's not forget Stobbswell, Perth Road, Lochie and the branch at 9 Mills Hospital. And so it's a bit of a plea and a question as well to officers that, I do grasp the point that there are not that many financial providers out there that can handle all of the council's various financial needs. But I think, when we talk about community benefits, closing branches is surely not high on the list of anyone in the community. And I would just ask officers to, be particularly mindful that when we're dealing with RBS or indeed anybody, to impress upon them that, not everybody in this world can afford to do online or has the capability to do online. And there's still very much a place out there in the real world to have walk-in branches.
Yeah, no, well made, Craig. I'll perhaps bring in Paul Thompson, Head of Corporate Finance, to comment on this. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Alexander, and thank you, Councillor Duncan, for the question. The consideration of the existing service that we received from RBS was that the current service contract meets the Council's requirements in terms of how we do bank. And there is an opportunity to extend that for 2 years and create a saving. And at that point, we'll be looking at extending the tender over a longer period. And at that point, we could consider alternative providers.
Okay, I think that's really good to hear that sort of clarification there. And let's be guided by that over the next 2 years. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Craig. And with that, is that item agreed? Thank you very much. That is all the business. So have a lovely evening and week, and we shall see you very soon. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, guys.
Bye.